Hello future programmers. In this next video in the C++ for Beginners series, we're going to work on an improved Hello World program. So let's get started. If you haven't already, go ahead and open up Code Blocks. For this video, we're going to make a new project. Once again, you can go to File, New, select Project. Here we're going to make a console application again. Be sure C++ is selected. And for this project title, I'm just going to do 02, since this is video 2, Improved Hello World. Next, again, select the defaults, finish. Again, as a reminder, we won't see anything at first, so go over, open up your project, expand sources, and double-click Maincpp. And here we got the standard template that's generated every time you create a new C++ project in Code Blocks. So this is once again the exact same thing that we've seen in the first lesson. And Hello World is kind of boring in my opinion, so we can expand upon this somewhat. You know, you could always add something like can compile and run it. And we expanded upon our simple Hello World. Hello World, my name is Scott. That's my first C++ program. Yay, but still not that exciting, right? So what we can do, instead of just manually typing everything in and having a display, we can make this a little bit more exciting. So here I'm going to introduce you to a new standard namespace, cin. Once again, following my convention, I'm just going to comment out the using namespace standard. We're going to manually put these in, standard and 2 colons. Cout, and of course we got to do an endl, standard 2 colons, end line. Let's just quickly build and run this program again and make sure everything works. So now we want to get some input. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to need a place to hold the input. So why don't I introduce you to another include statement that we're going to need to be using. That is the string library. Strings deal with basically more than one character and just makes formatting a lot easier. So now we're going to create a new variable. Again, we're going to use the standard. And this time it's going to be a string. And we can just call it anything. In this case, we want to say the user's name, so we'll just create a variable called name. Then again, since this is C++, make sure you put a semicolon at the end, kind of the period in the end of the sentence. So what this did right now is really nothing except allocate some memory for a future variable called name. So we actually want to get the input into the computer. To do this, we're going to use the cin, which is basically console in. So if you think of console out, it's going to output something to the computer monitor. Console in is just the opposite. It's actually going to accept something into the computer. We're also going to be using stream insertion operators, except this time we need to go this way instead because we're actually inputting it into the computer. Console in to the computer. Where we're going to put this information is in a variable called name, which we just created above. So while this one just kind of creates and allocates the memory, this one will actually run and expect input and assign it to name. And to make sure everything runs, before getting too crazy, we'll just copy this, bring it down. And instead of hello world, we're just going to output name. So maybe we could do something like my name is, put the variable name, and notice that needs to be separate from like our normal string. And also make this a little cleaner. And notice I'm putting insertion operators in between every kind of chunk of code that helps format the output. So far we're going to have my name is, make sure we put a space in. The name that the user is going to input is going to come in here. Then we can add some more text. make a space again, and this is my first C++ program. Sort of as before. Again, further insertion operators, then we end once again with a standard end line. So what this program is going to do when we run it, is the first line is going to be like before, hello world. But now we're going to create a variable called name. We're going to prompt the user for it, name. Then we're going to import or output that on the screen. So let's see if it works. See if I mistyped anything. Okay, it's working. And I could clean this up a little bit so it actually prompts this a little bit better. But for now, just enter your name. And there we go. My name is Scott. This is my first C++ program. So it's a little bit better, but let's see if we can improve it some more. Okay, so while that was a slight improvement to the program, as you noticed before, when we ran it, there's really nothing here to prompt the user, so they wouldn't know what's going on. So like we know, you need to enter your name, but let's try to clean that up a little bit. So why don't we prompt the user as to what to end? So we can insert this code here. Actually, why don't we rearrange this a little bit? Let's put this up on top. Copy and paste. Save a little typing. Let's prompt the user. Enter your name. And let's just move these up here a little bit. Put the name on top. And usually as a common practice, some of this, put your variable declarations more towards the top. But that's on a case-by-case basis. Yeah, okay, so we clean this up a little bit. For now, I'm just going to space, make it a little bit easier to see what's going on. Once again, we're making a variable called name, which is a type of string. This here is just a prompt for the user. Enter your name. Then we're going to console in, expect a name. Then basically print out what we did before. So let's compile and run. And here we go. Enter your name. A little bit cleaner. Still nothing too fancy, but we'll get there. Right, put a little colon there, make it a little bit cleaner. So one thing we can do, instead of having all this output hard-coded into our program, why don't we make a new variable, another string type called message, to hold our message that we want displayed. And we can set message equal to, make sure you put the quotes because it's a string, semicolon at the end. In the string we can do, we'll just take the hello world, pop it up there, and maybe just borrow some of this. And for now we'll leave enter your name the name, but we can remove some of these lines down here. And this one, instead of printing out hello world, we're going to send it our new variable message. All right, let's see what that does. As you can see, you will learn that check it down here is going to be very helpful for debugging your programs. Message is not declaring the scope, and we come up here and look. I forgot a colon. So let's pop a colon in. Let's try it again. Much better. Again, enter your name. Actually, this time it's not even going to matter. But anyways, you can see it printed out our string that's in message. Hello world, this is my first C++ program. So we can improve that a little bit to get our name in there. So let me do something quick and I'll be right back. Okay, while I had the video pause, I just simply added a couple of lines of comments. Basically, I put some numbers here to count out the characters in our string. And I got 00 for 0 through 9. The one here represents 10 through 19, 20 through 29, 30 through, put that in the right place, 30 through 39. That will come in handy later. Actually, we'll have a 40 here. Okay, so to make this a little bit more interesting, and if you remember, last time I ran this, here I'll run it again real quick. Even though it prompts for our name, it does, right now it does nothing with the name. So why don't we add our name back into the program? So here we got a variable. So what we can do, since we actually created a variable of the type string, remember before I mentioned that strings you're able to do a lot more with than just character input. What we can do is actually insert something into this variable and have it print out. So we again got our name. Now that we have our output assigned to a variable, we can do a lot more things with it. So one of the things we can do is actually manipulate the text inside it. So here we're going to be using the insertion operator. Since message is of the class string, we can actually use these dots to perform operations on it. One of the methods is insert. And how insert works is basically it's going to take this string here and it's going to take two parameters. The first parameter is going to be the position of the letter that you want to do the operation on. So in this case, we're going to insert the name variable that we had before. So a good place to do it, we got hello world. This is my first C+ program. So how about we do something like hello world, my name is your name. This is my first C++ program. So where a good place to enter that would be right, probably, oh, and by the way, I did add this /n. /n basically means new line. So there's two ways to enter a new line in C++. One is the end to L, which is usually used at the end of just a standard statement. But it's a /n, and the slash is kind of a inline operator character saying it ignores the slash, but it operates on the next character, which is in this case means new line. So /n is for new line. It's a lot easier inside strings than break them in two and type an end L in the middle all the time. So anyway, getting back, we want to enter our name in here. So we're going to count up, and that's, as you'll see now, makes this a lot easier. So right after here, so we do something like hello world, my name is, enter our name, and this is my first C++ program. So where we're going to do our insertion is, looks like, and one thing I should mention too, I should have busted this out a bit. Since this is kind of ignored, we won't put the space there. So it's actually only the new line that's counted in our characters. So that's why I got a blank. So even though it's two characters on the screen, to the compiler, it's only going to be one. So we'll count across. So here we go, 10. And we're going to put it right here at 13, just before 13. Actually, it works on the index just before it. So our first one's going to be at 13. So that's going to be our first parameter down here in the insert statement. So we're going to start at 13, and then we're going to go so far. So this can either be a parameter that we feed, or we can actually insert the text, which in this case we're going to do, so hello world, and we said we're going to do my name is, and of course we don't want to hard code that, so we're going to want to utilize our name variable that we used before. So I'll put some space here to pretty it up. And just like before, we can actually concatenate different parts of this. But inside an actual string, instead of using insertion operators, use a plus sign, which is for concatenation. So we're going to concatenate two different parts together to make a new string message. So it's basically going to take this old message and it's going to perform these operations on it and set that to our new string. You'll see here. I know it's kind of hard to follow right now, but follow me along and you'll be okay. So here we're going to put our name variable. We're going to concatenate that some more. So my name is, in my case, Scott. And we're going to do and this is space. And this is my first C++ program. Yeah, right. See, that should probably work. And then down here, we'll print a message. So everything looks good. Let's compile and run and see what happens. Okay, once again, enter your name. And okay, look, we got some output. Hello world. Enter your name, Scott. Hello world. My name is Scott. looks like we need a little cleanup here, and this is my first C++ program. So a couple things I'm spotting. We need to add a space here between the and and this, and also the this is capitalized, so we really don't want that. Okay, so there's kind of two things to do here that we'll need to do. The space is easy enough. We just need to add some space here before the quote. But we need to change this capital T to a lowercase t. So probably the easiest way to do that at this point. And this is going to seem weird again, but we're just going to put, so my name is Scott, and let's just put the small t here. But in order to do this, because if I run this now, we're going to get two t's here. I'll just do it quick. I actually got to compile because I made a change. All right, here's the 2t. So that don't look very good. We got to get rid of that capital T somehow. So we can use another operator. And this time we're going to do dot remove, or actually it's dot erase. And this also takes two parameters, but instead of a text input, it's going to take the position of the letter you want erased. In this case, it's at 13. And the index, so basically starting here, how many characters do you want erased? In this case, we only want the capital T erased. So let's see what happens. Let's build and run. And we got an error here. We got our semicolon. C++, yeah, I love semicolons. All right, start again. Okay, enter your name. Hello world. Ah, look, finally works. Hello world. My name is Scott, and this is my first C++ program. Notice we took care of the space down here. We added the small t, and here we took care of the large t. So we're starting to get some improvements here. Let's see what else we can do. Okay, one more thing we could probably do is let's fancy up the output a little bit. Well, this is nice and all. It's just kind of how it runs now. It's just over and done with. Not very exciting. So one thing we could do, we could probably delay this a little bit slightly, make it a little bit more interesting as it comes out. And we can also why don't we do this? Okay, for this, what I plan on now, we're going to have to add one more include statement. It's starting to get a little busy up here, but that's okay. Because this is what brings functionality to C++. It's all the libraries. Somebody else has done all the work for us. We just take advantage of it. So in this case, we're going to want to add some window. If you're on Windows, this point's going to vary depending on your operating system. But since I'm mainly covering the Windows aspect of this, we're going to use the Windows.h include file. So we're going to add some functionality for Windows. There is a way to do this in Linux too. I can't remember just right off the hand, but you can look it up. It's not really too hard. What we're going to do is take advantage right away of Windows. We're going to use a delay timer to output this text in a little bit nicer way. You'll see here. So add this include statement. Then we're going to come down here, and here's a good point. I'm going to be introducing you to what's called your first loop here, the for loop. And the for loop's a nice way to manipulate programs. And basically, to make a for loop here, we're just gonna, I'll just here make a quick one here for demonstration purposes. I'll go over it here real quick. So for loop, we start in for, make some parentheses for parameters, and the first one is going to be called the iterator. Typically, you'll see I use I for iterator. You know, it's going to be integer type. Make sure you put a semicolon in here. This probably look weird at first, but you'll get used to it in no time. So the first one's we declare a variable, and we're actually going to assign it right away. So in this case, we're just going to set it to 0. Then the second parameter is we're going to check for a condition. So if I is, in this case, I'll just do a simple print out so you can see what's going on. So as long as I is less than 10, this loop is going to run. So basically it's going to start at 0. It's going to run through. It's going to increment, which we'll do here, I++. The I++ is basically saying we're going to take I, whatever the value of I is, in this case 0. We're going to add 1. So I is going to equal I plus 1. That's what we're doing. So every time this runs through, we're going to take I. Actually, I'll just do it this way for now so you can kind of see what's going on. Okay, and we have to put braces here because everything that follows the for loop that's included in these braces is going to be part of the loop that it runs through. So in this case, let's just do, yeah, let me just copy this quick, toss it in here, and we'll just do, yeah, we'll just print out I, just so you can kind of see what a loop's doing here. All right, let's build and run. And we got our leftover stuff from before. And don't worry about this, we covered it already, but here's the new part that the loop added. So as you can see here, so once again, we created a for loop. We created an iterator of type integer, we set it to 0. So the first time through is I less than 10. Well, it's 0, so of course it's less than 10. So we come into a loop, we print out I, which in this case is 0, so here's our first 0. And then in loops, the actual iteration or the increment actually happens after the fact. So once the loop goes through the first time, then I, actually when it ends down here after the closing brace, it actually gets incremented to the next number, which in this case is 1. So the second time through, I is equal to 1. This is only on initialization, so within the loop, it keeps track of where it's at. So I is equal to 1, which is less than 10. Print this out, hit the ending brace, increment again. I is equal to 2. Rinse, repeat until we get up to 9. Goes through 9, gets 10. Oh, no, I is 10, so it's not less than 10, so it's going to end the loop. That's why we got 0 through 9. In computers start counting at 0. So a lot of times in loops, you'll use 0. I mean, you could change this too. If we started at 1, close out of here, run and compile. Yeah, it's just with some. As you can see, instead of 0, we got 1 through 9. So it kind of works the same way, but you'll say, well, geez, we don't got 10 entries, we only got 9. That's why I usually start at 0. I mean, if you really want to start at 1, what you'd have to do is 10 less than or equal, equal to 10. And close this out. Compile and run. And put some stuff. There we go. We got our 10 entries again. I'm going to change it back so we're pretty much following standard way of doing things. And in this case, we're going to do I equals 0. And also, instead of doing I just did this so you could kind of see a little bit better what was happening. Another shortcut way of incrementing by 1 is just I plus plus. So it's the exact same thing. It's just saying every run through the loop, you're going to increment I by 1. So just run it again quick just to show you. There you go. Okay, so we kind of know what a loop is now. So instead of going through I, like we did before, I mean, instead of going through 10, what we're going to set before, we're actually going to work on this string here. So what we're actually going to do, and this may be tough, but follow along. It's kind of cool, so you'll see. So we'll keep the I, but instead of I equaling 10, what we're going to look for is we're actually going to look for message. We use the dot operator again. This time we're going to use the size. And that just takes an empty set of parentheses, no parameters. So what this operator is doing, size of is basically the size. It's going to get the size of our string here. And of course, remember that we actually already worked on our message a little bit more. So it's actually not going to be the length of this one. It's going to be the length of our new and improved message that also includes my name is, your name, and the letter T. So instead of, well, we got 40, it's probably going to be about 60 some characters. I mean, we could print that out if we want. Actually, I'll do that quick just to show you here. Let's just take this, standard cout, and we'll do just a message size. And you don't necessarily need to end L's and all these. You could just end it right here, but standard end lines help keep the output a little bit cleaner so we can see what's going on better. So I'll just include it here. All right. And it'll be a little messy, but the important part, I just want to show you what the message size is going to print out here. Again, just put something for the thing. And well, one thing we can notice right away is look how much our loop increased. So yeah, it was pretty close. Looks like there's 57 or so. And right here, there's 58. So once we did this, the 40, and we entered our, my name is, I just used S in this case, but the name and the T, we ended up with 58 characters. So our loop ran through 0, which we initialized with right here, through the size of our new message, which is 58. So just like before, as long as it's below 58, which in this case was 57, it was, the loop will run. Once it got to 58, once it was equal to 58, as you see, since 58 is not less than 58, the loop quit. So I hope that helped explain a little bit. Instead of just iterating through some numbers, what we're going to do instead, we're going to manipulate our output. So let's print on our greeting down here instead of just all at once up top like we did before. So what we can do instead of, well, actually we'll keep the I, but here I'll show what we're going to do. So we're going to output message. And each of these, this message is what's kind of known as an array. It's getting into an advanced topic, but since it's a string object, each element's kind of got a placeholder within this message array. So one way we can access the individual characters within a string element or in an array is that we use square brackets. And what we can feed into it is I. So in this case, instead of printing out the numbers 0 through, what was it, 58, 57, it's actually going to print out H, then it's going to go through the loop E, L, L, world, and so on. Here, let's just run it real quick. I'll demonstrate. And type in the name. And here you can see, kind of weird. We got our first one, but then down here, hello world, my name is Scott, and this is my C++ program. And the reason it's kind of weird is I added a standard out. Let's just get rid of that. Then it'll print on one line. And also, instead of having it print twice, let's just let's get rid of this line for now. Comment it out. I'm not getting rid of it. And we'll get rid of the size since you kind of already seen how that went. All right, so let's run it once again and see what happens. All right, a little bit better. So enter your name, Scott. Hello world, my name is Scott. This is my first C++ program. Now it looks exactly like it did a few minutes ago, but notice this time I commented out the hard code lines and we're actually using this loop instead to print these out. So right now you're saying, well, what's the difference? It just seemed like a more complicated way to do that. Well, here's where we get into why I needed the Windows H file before. So instead of just printing these off all at once, what we're going to do is we're going to add a little delay before each letter. So we're going to use a Windows function, sleep, and this takes parameters in milliseconds. So let's, I don't know, let's start with 100 milliseconds, see how that goes. So basically what this is going to do, it's just going to, one thing that's common too is you can put comments after something, you know, just to kind of highlight it for your own use or other people later on. And what it's going to do is basically pause the program for length of time just to help format this message a little bit. Let's run it and you'll kind of see where I'm going with this here. So once again, run it, enter a name. Ah, look at that. More of a typewriter effect, like the computer is typing you. So instead of just all at once in your face, you can kind of get a little bit more formatted output. And you can increase or decrease that time. I mean, it did seem to get a little long there, so maybe let's reduce that to 50. And one other thing I noticed too is maybe we don't need a colon in front of name. Let's recompile, run it again. And there you go, yet another improvement. Okay, so there's a couple other things I can think of real quick. Before I get into that though, this video probably is going to start getting a little bit long, so you guys will have to let me know in the comments below if you'd rather have more involved tutorials, or would you rather keep them to 10-15 minutes each? But for now, there's a couple more things that we could easily do with this program, so I think I'll draw this one out and wait for feedback to see if this gets too long. But one thing we can do too, we noticed when we ran it, everything was kind of crowded. So one thing we can do, let me uncomment this out. I'm just going to borrow a line of code. We'll get rid of the message part completely. So you can also just, what this is going to do is standard C out, and we're just going to feed it the endl, nothing else. This is properly valid. What it's going to basically do is just add a blank line in between it. So you run it up here. You input your name, and you can see there's a little break. So everything's just not so dirty. And we could actually even do one at the bottom too to get rid of this. There's other cleaner ways to do this, like we can actually clear the screen, but I'll save that for later. But this is just one nice, easy way you can pretty up your output a little bit. Let's just throw one down here. So between that and the standard message, once again, really don't matter, but it's just nice to kind of clean it up, help to display a little bit. There you go. So we got kind of our one chunk of code, and we got the other. And this is just a system message, as I showed you at the very beginning in the first tutorial. Okay, so one thing we can do, it ain't really going to help the output. I'll leave that for now, but one concept I'll introduce you to is we'll expand on functions. As I said in the first video, main is actually a function. Returns integer, accepts no parameters. But one thing what we do is typically when you request input and stuff for a user, you'd like to bust that functionality out. Right now it's a pretty simple program, we can see it, but you can imagine once you get hundreds or thousands of lines of code, you just don't want everything lumped in main. It's just hard to manage, hard to find. So we're gonna bust some of this code out into its own separate function. So what we can do is we can create a new function, and this function is going to return, it's actually going to return a string. So let's do standard to :string, and we'll call it, let's just call it something like get name. Since we'll bust out the get name function, and it's going to take no input parameters. And just like main, you're going to need opening and closing braces. So everything within these is going to be part of the get name function. We got a new function, and the best practice is actually to keep variables local to their function. But what I was going to say is you can actually have global variables, so all the functions have access to it. But in this case, I'm just going to follow convention, and we're going to create a new string variable to hold the name was inside get name. And even though I'm calling this name, it is not the same as this name here because it's in its own function. Now, what I was going to say is I could actually declare this outside them both, where they both have access to it. But in this case, I'm going to keep them separate. So actually, just to emphasize it a little bit better, let's just do, let's just call it n. How about that? So n, let's get string n. So then what we're going to do is come down here, and we're just going to grab all this here, and we'll cut it, and we'll toss it up here. And what did I do wrong? X. Okay, clean this up a little bit. Instead of name, we're going to CN. Okay, so what this is going to do, we're going to bust this functionality out into its own function. Create a new name. Prompt the user for input name. And here we're going to actually return the information that we queried from the user, which will be here, standard string. So then down here, instead of previously, we actually had to see out, get your name and the input and all that stuff. So what we're going to do here, instead of all that stuff, is just, we already have the variable name here. So let's just do name again. We're going to assign it the result of getName function. And helps if you don't misspell. But anyway, so name is equal to getName function. So how this is going to work now, instead of all the code in here prompting the user for their name, it's actually going to say set the name to, and let this getName function handle the details. So it's going to pop up here, create a local variable, cout again, prompt for the name. Users going to input their name. This time the function is going to return n to the caller, which in this case is down here. So once it gets that, here's the n gets passed in the name, and our program should work as before. So let's compile and run that quick just to verify. Okay, which it does. There's our nice little format. So even though the appearance is the same, identical operation, what we did was broke our code up a little bit. Again, the simple program, it may not be apparent why we're doing it, but it's an easy way to wrap your head around how functions work. So congratulations, you just learned how to use your new function. And one thing too, and this is a fairly basic function, we just got input, but how about if the user starts entering gibberish, or we want to do some checks or something like that? We can clean this up a little bit more. One way to do that is we can use another loop. So instead of just right away taking the input, let's insert a loop into here, make this a little bit more worthwhile. So we actually prompt for the name right away, but then we want a loop to start to wait for the user to do a name. In this case, we're going to use another loop. Instead of a for loop, we're going to use a while loop, because we're actually going to wait for the input. And what we're going to do here, I'll explain it, so just let me type it in here quick. It'd be a little easier. So we're going to do while standard cin. Okay, so basically this exclamation mark is a not operator. So while actually checks for a condition. So what this is saying, while not true, basically while cn has not been assigned to n, run this loop. And again, in loops you need braces, so everything within the braces will run in this while loop. And here what we're going to do is while they haven't entered anything into C, we're just going to clear out the input. And what we're going to do in this case, instead of a standard cin that you're used to, we're actually going to do an operation on it. In this case it's called clear, and it takes no parameters. So this will just loop in place until you actually enter your name. Then when it completes, and actually up here it takes the place, we're assigning n to cn instead of down here. So I can just I'm just going to remove this for now because it's duplicate functionality. All right. Let's compile and run that and see what happens. Enter your name. Same as before. But what this will do, in case you hit enter, see, it's just going to keep. I could put that in the loop where it prompts for the name each time, but until you actually enter something, that loop is going to continue on. And one other thing I would like to mention before I finish this video, a fairly minor thing, but I was talking about before, I think I called both these insertion operators. Well, I did. I just did it again. They're insertion operators. And actually, the proper terminology on the cout is a stream insertion operator, because we're inserting whatever into the output stream. And a minor distinction, but in cin, it's actually called an extraction operator. So we're actually extracting whatever the user typed in. So we're extracting it and putting into usually a variable or something into the input. Just wanted to clear that up before you move on. Well, I think that is probably enough for now. I mean, there's several other things that you could probably do, but I'm thinking these videos are starting to get long. Again, let me know if you'd rather have them short or longer. But I hope you enjoy that. A lot of concepts that usually are introduced later on in C++ tutorial series, but myself, I learned by just kind of jumping in and getting it all at once, and usually this makes it a little bit more interesting too, instead of going through piece by piece. I mean, here you got like a little bit more typewriting effect and learn a little experience of working with strings and how to erase, how to insert characters, some for loops, some while loops, breaking out into a function. So overall, I think we're doing pretty good for lesson 2. Again, let me know what you think in the comments, and see you next time.